3 weeks after my husband died, my son and his wife put my bags on the porch. They thought grief would make me quiet. They were wrong. If you love family stories about betrayal, family secrets, and late comebacks that hit hard, subscribe now. Because the day my own son tried to push me out of the house my husband built, I found out 2 things. My place in that family had already been priced. And the only person ready to fight for me wasn't the child I gave birth to. My name is Marlene Whitaker. I'm 69. My husband, Eddie, had been dead for 21 days. 21. I counted because grief makes you count strange things. Days. Pills. Phone calls. The number of times a house stopped sounding like home. Eddie and I were married for 46 years. We built our life in Cedar Ridge, Ohio. He ran an auto body shop behind the house. I kept the books. Raised our kids. Learned how to read men by the way they stood in doorways. That mattered now. Because my son Brent had started standing in mine like the house already belonged to him. His wife Kendra was worse. She smiled every time she said something cruel. That morning, I came back from dropping off a casserole at my daughter Lila's apartment. And there they were. 2 suitcases. 1 overnight bag. And the cedar chest Eddie built for our 25th anniversary. All sitting on the porch. Like I had already been sorted. Kendra opened the door before I reached it. Not wide. Just enough to block it. Behind her stood Brent. Arms crossed. Silent. Cowards love silence. It lets other people do the ugliest part for them. What is this? I asked. Kendra tilted her head. We think a little space would be best. Space. That word people use when they mean removal. I looked at my son. Not her. Him. Are you putting me out? He took too long to answer. That was answer enough. Then he said, you'd be more comfortable somewhere else for a while. Somewhere else. No place offered. No plan. Just gone. I should tell you I screamed. I didn't. I just looked at the boy I had raised, the man I no longer recognized, and felt something inside me go cold and clear. Then I asked the only question that mattered. Where exactly do you expect me to go? Kendra gave a little shrug. Maybe call Gavin. You always treated him like a second son. That was when I understood. This wasn't grief. This wasn't tension. This was a plan. A neat, smiling little plan. Get me out. Move fast. Take the house. And maybe the workshop lot behind it too. So I took out my phone with my bags on the porch, my daughter-in-law in the doorway, and my son hiding behind silence, and I called the one person in my family who had never once needed my blood to act like my child. When Gavin answered, I said only this. They put my bags outside. His voice changed instantly. Who? Not what happened. Not are you okay? Who? And right then, for the first time all day, I knew I was not done yet. Gavin got there in less than 25 minutes. Black SUV. Gravel spitting under the tires. Car door opening before the engine had fully died. He stepped out, looked at my bags, looked at the cedar chest, looked at my face, then looked straight at Brent. Who put her things outside? Again, not what happened. Who? That question hit harder than yelling. Because it left no room for hiding. Brent straightened up. This is family business. Gavin didn't even blink. My aunt standing on a porch with her life packed into luggage is my business. Then he turned to me. His voice changed. Softer. Did they touch the cedar chest? I nodded. His jaw tightened. That was the only warning. Then he handed his keys to the driver. Load Mrs. Whitaker's things. Carefully. Especially the chest. Kendra stepped forward fast. You can't just take property. Gavin finally looked at her. Cold. Calm. Those are her personal belongings. Not staging inventory. That landed. Brent came down one step from the doorway. Dad left me the house. I know, Gavin said. And your mother still has the right to live here. Which means putting her bags outside was not only cruel. It was stupid. Silence. The good kind. The kind that only comes when somebody in the room finally speaks consequences out loud. Lila pulled into the driveway right then, still in scrubs. She saw the bags. Saw my face. Saw Brent and Kendra. And went pale. You actually did this? Brent snapped at. Once. Stay out of it. Lila looked at him like he was a stranger wearing her brother's face. She has nowhere to go. Kendra folded her arms. She has options. Funny how people love the word options when none of the options involve their own couch. Then Gavin said the thing that changed everything. He looked at Brent and asked, "Did you already book the appraiser?" Brent's face shifted. Just for a second. But I saw it. So did Lila. "What appraiser?" she whispered. No one answered. That was answer enough. My blood went cold. The workshop lot. Eddie's garage. The back piece of land Brent had already been asking questions about. It suddenly clicked into place so fast it made me dizzy. This wasn't about grief. This wasn't even about me. This was about moving me out before somebody came to put a price on what was behind the house. Gavin took one step closer. Not loud. Not threatening. Worse. Certain. "You didn't just put her bags outside," he said. "You moved too early." Brent tried to recover. "You don't know what you're talking about." Gavin slipped a business card from his coat pocket and handed it to me. "Estate attorney. Family litigation. Just in case." Then he looked back at my son. "No," he said. "I know exactly what I'm talking about. And now your mother is going inside with me to read every paper your father left behind." That was the moment I stopped feeling like a widow being pushed out and started feeling like someone they had underestimated. I picked up the cedar chest with both hands, looked at Brent, then at Kendra, then said, "Take me to Eddie's office." Nobody moved. Not Brent. Not Kendra. Not even Lila. The whole porch went quiet. Then Brent said, "Mom, this is getting out of hand." Out of hand. That was rich. My bags were on the porch. My husband's cedar chest was sitting in damp air. And somehow I was the problem. I looked him dead in the face. "Take me to Eddie's office." Kendra jumped in fast. "Maybe we should all calm down first. People always say calm down when the truth is about to cost them something." Gavin didn't even turn toward her. "Aunt Marlene asked for her husband's papers. Not your permission." That shut her up. Brent hesitated. That was all I needed to see. Because innocent people don't stall in front of filing cabinets. They open them. Eddie's office was exactly the way he left it. His cap on the hook. His pen on the desk. That smell of soap, oil and wintergreen that nearly took my knees out from under me. The file cabinet was locked. Of course it was. Brent said. "The key's around somewhere." Liar. Before I could answer, Lila crossed the room, reached into the little ceramic bowl on Eddie's desk, moved aside the loose screws and bolts and held up the brass key. Of course that was where he left it. Eddie never believed in hiding something so well that good people couldn't find it. I opened the drawer myself. Insurance. Taxes. Vendor files. Then the second drawer. Estate papers. Trust documents. Deed copies. My fingers were shaking now. Not because I was old. Because I could feel the truth sitting in there somewhere, waiting to decide what kind of son I had really raised. Then Gavin leaned slightly toward one clipped packet and said, "There. Blue tab. Occupancy and survivor protections." I pulled it out. "Read once. Then again. Then one more time." Because the words were so clear I almost didn't trust them. "The surviving spouse, Marlene Whitaker, shall retain exclusive residential occupancy rights for the duration of her natural life, unless voluntarily relinquished in writing." My natural life. Not a few weeks. Not until Brent felt ready. Not until Kendra finished moving furniture. My whole life. The room changed after that. Not emotionally. Structurally. Because now this wasn't a family disagreement. It was proof. I looked up at Brent. He had gone pale. Kendra tried first. Maybe there are later amendments. There weren't. I knew it. Gavin flipped to the signature page. Witnessed. Notarized. Final. Then he looked straight at Brent and asked the question my son had been praying nobody would say out loud. "So tell me, were you hoping she wouldn't read this? Or were you hoping grief would keep her too tired to fight?" Brent said nothing. That was answer enough. And right then, standing in Eddie's office with his papers in my hand, I realized something that hurt worse than the porch. My husband had protected me on paper because somewhere deep down, he no longer trusted our son to do it in person. I should have stopped after reading the occupancy clause. That alone was enough. Enough to bring my bags back inside. Enough to wipe that smug look off Kendra's face. Enough to remind Brent that a house is not his just because he starts speaking about it in the future tense. But grief does something strange once truth finally cracks through it. It makes you hungry. Not for revenge. For the rest of the truth. I kept searching. Top drawer. Second drawer. Then Eddie's desk. The narrow left side drawer he called the 1-4 things that matter fast. Lila found the key in the little ceramic bowl on his desk. Of course she did. Of course Eddie had left it somewhere simple. He used to say, if I hide something too well, I'll just end up hiding it from myself. Inside the drawer was an envelope. My name on the front. In Eddie's handwriting. Marlene, if Brent starts moving too fast. My hands went cold. Not shaky. Cold. That was worse. Because shaking is grief. Cold is recognition. I opened it. Inside was a letter. And one extra document folded behind it. I read the first line and had to sit down. If you are reading this, somebody has mistaken your grief for weakness. The whole room disappeared for a second. Not literally, but enough that I had to blink twice to bring it back. I could hear Eddie's voice so clearly it hurt. Steady. Practical. Never dramatic. That was what made it worse. He wasn't writing like a man afraid of a fantasy. He was writing like a man who had seen just enough of our son to worry about timing. I kept reading. If Brent ever tries to move you, rush the workshop or start talking about value before you've even had time to breathe, he is not following my wishes. He is following money. Lila made a sound beside me. Small. Broken. I didn't look at her. I couldn't. Because beneath the letter was the document Gavin had already started unfolding. One page. Attorney letterhead. A signed restriction. The workshop lot could not be sold, listed, optioned, or formally reviewed for redevelopment for 18 months after Eddie's death without my written consent. Not Brent's. Mine. I looked up slowly. At Brent. Then Kendra. Neither of them spoke. That told me everything. They knew enough to move. They just hadn't read enough to win. Kendra recovered first. People like her always do. There may be other interpretations, she said. Interpretations. As if black ink on white paper were a mood. As if greed got softer when spoken in legal vocabulary. Gavin didn't even bother looking annoyed. He just held up the page and said, no, there really aren't. Brent finally found his voice. Dad didn't explain all of that. That one nearly destroyed me. Not because it was clever. Because it was childish. A 43-year-old man standing in his father's office saying, in effect, no one told me I couldn't. I folded Eddie's letter once. Carefully. Pressed the crease flat with my thumb. Then I looked at my son and asked the question that had been waiting for me since the porch. When were you going to tell me? He looked at the floor. Then at Kendra. Then back at me. And that was when I understood the ugliest part of all. There had never been a moment plan for telling me. Only a moment plan for moving me. The truth was never supposed to arrive before the appraiser did. And suddenly I could see the whole sequence. The changed code. The pressure to leave the master bedroom. The practical speeches. The bags on the porch. Not grief. A rollout. A widow managed like a delay in escrow. I stood up then, with Eddie's letter in one hand and the restriction in the other. Looked at Brent. Looked at Kendra. And said the sentence that changed the room for good. You were not trying to help me through grief. You were trying to get ahead of paperwork. The room changed after I said it. Not emotionally. Financially. You can tell when people stop thinking like relatives and start thinking like people who may lose a deal. Brent straightened first. Not with guilt. With calculation. Kendra crossed her arms, but I could see it in her eyes too. They were no longer looking at me like a widow who had become inconvenient. They were looking at me like a delay. A document-shaped delay. That's not fair, Brent said. There it was. Not. That's not true. Just that's not fair. Interesting difference. Because people usually argue facts when they still can. They argue fairness when facts have already left them behind. I held Eddie's letter in one hand and the restriction in the other. My fingers had stopped shaking. That surprised me. Maybe because grief had finally met proof. Maybe because there is something about seeing your dead husband protect you in writing that forces your spine to remember itself. Lila stepped closer to me. Not dramatic. Just enough. That mattered more than she knew. Some children defend you with lawsuits. Some defend you by moving one foot to your side at exactly the right second. Gavin looked at Brent and said, "You booked a psych consultant before speaking to your mother honestly. That means intent." Brent let out a hard breath through his nose. "It means I was trying to get ahead of a problem." Problem. There. That was the word. Not situation. Not grief. Not confusion. Problem. Me. My existence in the house. My breathing in rooms Kendra wanted to redesign. My body standing between them and acreage. The truth had finally found its noun. I looked at my son. "You mean I became a problem the second Dad died?" His face changed at that. Just for a flicker. Because however dead a conscience looks from across a porch, it can still twitch when someone names the grave correctly. "That's not what I said," he snapped. "No, of course not. Men like Brent rarely say the ugliest thing exactly. They orbit it. Use cleaner language. Hope your exhaustion will do the final translation for them." Kendra stepped in then, smooth as ever. "Marlene, nobody is saying you don't matter. We're saying this property can't sit here bleeding value while everyone waits around pretending sentiment pays taxes." There it was again. That ugly little talent she had. Making greed sound organized. Making impatience sound adult. Making a widow sound irresponsible for still loving the wall she helped paint. Gavin didn't even raise his voice. The workshop restriction means nobody is waiting around. It means Eddie already anticipated this exact behavior. Kendra went still. Really still. That told me Gavin had hit the center. Not the porch. Not the bags. Not even the appraiser. The center. Eddie had seen enough before he died to leave a paper trail against his own son's timing. That is the kind of truth that stains a room. Brent turned on Gavin. "You always do this." Gavin lifted one brow. "Do what?" "Walk in here and act like you know this family better than I do." Silence. Then Gavin said the one thing I knew Brent had hated since he was 17. "I know how your mother was treated." "That's enough." Brent laughed once. Short. Mean. "You think because she took you in that makes you some kind of hero now?" No one moved. Not me. Not Lila. Not even Kendra. Because sometimes a person says the one thing so ugly it clears the air. Gavin did not react the way Brent wanted. He didn't get loud. Didn't take the bait. He just looked at my son and said, "No. It makes me somebody who remembers." That nearly undid me. Because memory is the whole war in families like ours. Who remembers sacrifice? Who remembers kindness? Who remembers who carried whom before money made everyone rewrite the story? Brent turned back to me then. "Last try. Mom, if you had just talked to me." I almost laughed. Actually laughed. A little. Because that sentence was so absurd it deserved sound. "If I had talked to you?" I took one step forward. Eddie's office behind me. His cap on the hook. His smell still in the wood. My bags were on the porch. He opened his mouth. Closed it. I kept going. "You changed the code. You booked the consultant. You let furniture into my bedroom. And now you want to act like this became serious because I found the papers." That one landed. Hard. Because it was true. The betrayal had happened already. The papers had only stopped them from dressing it up. Kendra's voice lost some of its polish then. "What exactly do you want?" That question always comes when control starts leaking. Not what is right. Not what is fair. What do you want? Meaning. What will make this expensive? I looked at the letter again. Then at Eddie's desk. Then at Brent. And suddenly I understood the next part. This was no longer about discovering what they had done. Now it was about making them sit inside it. Not for 5 seconds. Not just long enough to look guilty. Long enough to hear it named. Long enough to know they had failed not only me but Eddie too. I folded the letter once. Very carefully. Then I said, "What I want is for both of you to come back tomorrow. Sit in this room. And listen while I read every word your father left behind." Brent frowned. "Tomorrow?" "Yes," I said. "Tonight you can spend one evening without touching a single lock, document, or square foot of my life." Then I looked at Kendra. "And if one more thing in this house gets moved before morning, I won't be reading Eddie's letter to family. I'll be handing it to council." That shut the room down. Completely. Good. Because some part endings should sound like doors locking from the inside. I did not sleep much that night. Not because I was afraid. Because I was finally no longer confused. Fear keeps you pacing. Clarity keeps you awake. There is a difference. Gavin took me back to his house after we left Eddie's office. Lila came too. She didn't even ask. Just got into the SUV like daughters who still have a conscience understand when a mother should not be left alone with her thoughts. Rosa had soup waiting again. I barely touched it. Not because I couldn't eat. Because my stomach was too busy reorganizing 21 days of grief into something uglier. Not loss. Betrayal with scheduling. That was the shape now. Not my husband died and my family fell apart. No. It was my husband died and someone in my family immediately started checking how fast value could move. That is a colder sentence. And once you know it's true, every memory begins rearranging itself behind it. Gavin sat across from me at the long oak table with Eddie's letter beside his laptop. Not open. Just there. Like a witness. I made a few calls, he said. I almost laughed at that. A few calls from Gavin never meant a few. It meant he had already begun quietly pulling on the wires that hold people's stories together until the false ones came loose. What kind of calls? He slid his phone toward me. Not dramatically. Just enough. A screenshot. An email confirmation from Mercer Development. Forwarded by a contact of his who knew someone in their acquisitions office. Subject line, Whitaker parcel. Preliminary access notes under it. A line I will never forget. Owner's son indicates widow likely transitioning off-site soon. Widow. Not my name. Not Marlene. Not Mrs. Whitaker. Widow. As if my whole identity had already been professionally reduced to an obstacle expected to clear on schedule. Lila covered her mouth. Oh my God. I didn't speak. Couldn't. Because there it was. Not porch cruelty. Not family tension. A business phrase. An outside company now using my grief as a timeline marker because my son had fed them the wording. Gavin kept going. Not cruelly. Not softly either. Just with the precision of someone who knows that when truth is finally visible, mercy lives in clarity, not cushioning. There's more, he said. He opened a second email. This one from Kendra. Not to the developer. To a local interior staging company. Sent 6 days after Eddie's funeral. Need to refresh primary bedroom and clear personal remnants once transition occurs. Personal remnants. That was what 46 years of marriage had become in her language. Not photographs. Not clothes. Not memory. Remnants. Leftovers. Evidence of a woman who had not moved fast enough for her plans. Lila stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. She wrote that. Yes, Gavin said. And the estimate included wall paint, curtain replacement and off-site storage options. Off-site storage. I looked at Eddie's letter again. Still folded. Still quiet. And I understood something that hurt more than the porch, more than the suitcase handles, more even than Brent's email. They had already started redecorating my absence. That is a kind of cruelty no one admits to in daylight. Because it sounds as ugly as it is. But ugly things don't stop being real just because people say them in cleaner tones. I finally asked the question that had been sitting in the room since we got there. Did Brent know about Kendra's staging messages? Gavin didn't answer right away. He turned the phone back toward himself. Scrolled once. Then twice. Then looked up. Yes. How do you know? Because he replied with one line. The room went still. Not one of us moved. I could hear the ice maker in the freezer down the hall. The small click of the house settling. Lila breathing too fast. And then Gavin read it aloud. Do what you need. She notices less when she's sad. I closed my eyes. That was the line. Not because it was the most polished. Not because it was the most strategic. Because it was the truest. Said everything. He had not only counted on my grief. He had studied it. Timed it. Used it. Not as a son watching his mother break. As a man watching leverage open. Lila started crying then. Not pretty crying. Not movie crying. Furious crying. I hate him, she whispered. I looked at her. Really looked. And I thought about how easily hate can turn into inheritance too if you aren't careful. No, I said quietly. You hate what he chose. That matters. Because once you name a person as pure evil, you stop demanding anything harder from them than exile. And I was not ready for exile. I was ready for consequence. Different thing. Gavin shut the laptop and folded his hands. Tomorrow, he said, Brent is going to come in softer. He'll say everyone was emotional. He'll call it a misunderstanding. Then he'll try to get you talking about the future before you've had time to finish naming the past. I knew he was right. Because that is what weak men do after evidence enters the room. They do not confess. They rebrand. I reached for Eddie's letter. Held it flat against the table with both palms. Then said the thing that finally made the room feel steady beneath me. Good. Then tomorrow he can sit there and explain to me how a son looks at his grieving mother and decides sadness makes her easier to remove. Brent came the next morning. Alone. That mattered. Because men only arrive without their wives when they think softness will work better than strategy. He brought coffee. 2 cups in a cardboard tray, like caffeine could cover the smell of what he had done. I saw him through Gavin's front glass before Rosa opened the door. Clean sweater. Clean shave. The face of a man trying very hard to look like reason after behaving like appetite. I did not rush to him. I walked into the foyer slowly. With Gavin a few steps behind me and Lila off to the side. Arms folded so tight she looked like she was holding herself together by force. Brent lifted the tray slightly. Mom, I thought maybe we could talk. There it was. Not I'm sorry. Not I was wrong. Just talk. Because talk is what people ask for when truth has already arrived and they need time to dilute it. I'm listening, I said. He set the coffee down on a side table. Didn't sit. Didn't fully step forward either. Still measuring the room. Still trying to find the version of himself that could survive in it. I think things got emotional, he said. Lila laughed once. A hard, ugly sound. Your wife put Mom's suitcases on the porch. Brent kept his eyes on me. Not her. Smart. Cowardly but smart. I never wanted her to feel pushed out. No, of course not. He just wanted me out. Feeling was secondary. Gavin stayed quiet. That was the best thing he could have done. Silence makes liars work longer. Brent took a breath. Dad's death hit everyone hard. Kendra was trying to make space. I was trying to manage things before they became worse. Manage. Another pretty word for rearranging a woman while she is still trying to remember how to breathe without her husband. I looked at him. Do you know what Kendra called my marriage? He blinked. What? Personal remnants. That hit. Not because he hadn't known. Because hearing it in my voice made it harder to keep sounding like a son instead of an accomplice. His mouth tightened. She shouldn't have said it like that. Like that. Not. She shouldn't have said it. Just like that. There it was again. Not guilt. Editing. I stepped closer. Not much. Just enough that he had to stop pretending this was a hallway misunderstanding. You let furniture get delivered to my bedroom 6 days after your father's funeral. He looked down. Then back up. His shoulders shifted. Smaller somehow. I was trying to prepare. For what? He didn't answer. Because we both knew. For my removal. For my shrinking. For the next version of the house. So I gave him the answer myself. You were preparing for me to become absence. That one landed. Hard. I saw it in his face. In the way he stopped. Moving his hands. In the way his eyes went glassy, not with tears, but with the shock of finally hearing his own behavior named cleanly. He tried one more turn. The oldest one. The softest one. Mom, he said quietly. I'm your son. I almost smiled. Because that is what people say when they think history should still outweigh evidence. Yes, I said. You are. Then I held his eyes and let him hear the whole truth. And that is the only reason this hurts more than it disgusts me. Lila looked away. Gavin did not. Brent stood there in the foyer, my son by blood, a stranger by conduct, and for the first time since Eddie died, I think he understood that I was no longer standing in front of him as the mother who would explain him back into innocence. I was standing there as the witness. And witnesses are much harder to move. After Brent left, the house went quiet again. Not peaceful quiet. Aftershock quiet. The kind where every sound feels like it came back from somewhere broken. Lila stood at the window for a long time, arms folded, watching his truck disappear past the trees. Then she turned around and said, "There's something else." That got my attention fast. Because by then I already knew one thing. In families like mine, the first betrayal is rarely the whole one. "What do you mean?" I asked. Lila swallowed. Dad kept a second drawer in the old office desk. Not the file cabinet. The left side drawer in the partner's desk. He used to call it his fast access drawer. I knew exactly the one. Narrow. Wooden. Always sticky in humid weather. Eddie kept the things there he didn't want buried in official folders. Not less important. More personal. The kind of papers a man keeps close because he knows one day somebody may need them before lawyers do. Gavin looked up from where he had been answering a text. "Did we check it yesterday?" Lila shook her head. "No. Yesterday I was just trying not to scream." "Fair enough." So we drove back. All three of us. The house felt different now. Not like mine again. Not yet. But no longer like theirs either. Like paper had changed the air. We went straight to Eddie's office. No small talk. No slowing down. Lila reached the desk. First. Her fingers shook as she opened the left drawer. Inside were old receipts, a tape measure, 2 pens, and 1 large envelope. My name was written across the front in Eddie's handwriting. "For Marlene if things get ugly." My knees nearly gave out. Not because I was shocked anymore. 'Cause I wasn't. That was the worst part. Somewhere deep down, Eddie had already seen enough of Brent to prepare for this. I opened the envelope with both hands. Inside was a letter. And clipped behind it, a signed document on the estate attorney's letterhead. I read the first line and had to stop. "If you are reading this, then someone has mistaken your grief for weakness." I heard his voice so clearly in my head I almost turned around. That steady, no-nonsense voice of his. The one that could calm a mechanic, a banker, or a frightened child with exactly the same tone. I kept reading. "If Brent starts talking about the workshop, the back lot, or your future before you've even had time to bury me properly, he is not protecting you. He is protecting value." Lila made a broken sound beside me. I didn't. I couldn't. Because clipped behind the letter was the piece that changed everything. A recorded restriction. Signed. Filed. Clear. The workshop lot could not be listed, sold, optioned, reviewed, or discussed for redevelopment for 18 months after Eddie's death without my written consent. Not Brent's. Mine. I looked up slowly. At Gavin. Then at Lila. Then back at the paper. That was when the final shape of it came clear. They had not just tried to move me. They had moved too soon for money they didn't even legally control yet. Greedy. And sloppy. The two always traveled together. Gavin read the restriction once. Then looked at me with that same calm, dangerous stillness he gets when he's already halfway to protecting someone. "He knew they might try this," he said. Yes, he did. And that truth hurt worse than the porch, worse than the suitcases, worse even than Brent's soft-voiced lies. Because it meant my husband had protected me from our son on paper when he could no longer trust his son to protect me in person. I folded the letter carefully, pressed it flat with my palm, then looked. Around Eddie's office, the desk, the cap on the hook, the yellow legal pad, the room where he had trusted work more than words, and I made my decision. "Call Brent," I said. Lila blinked. "What?" "Call him. Tell him to come back tomorrow." Gavin watched me closely. "You sure?" I nodded. Yes, because there are moments when truth in private is not enough. Some men need to hear the dead speak through the people they tried to silence. And this time I wanted my son sitting down when I read his father's words out loud. Brent came back the next day. Kendra came with him. Of course she did. People like her never miss a meeting when money is bleeding. We sat in Eddie's office. Me behind the desk. Brent and Kendra across from me. Lila near the window. Gavin by the file cabinet. And Eddie everywhere. In the cap on the hook. In the smell of oil and paper. In the letter folded open in my hands. No one spoke first. Good. Some truths need room before they land. I looked at my son. Really looked at him. And for one strange second I saw all of him at once. The little boy with scraped knees. The teenager who hated being second to anybody. The grown man who had let greed teach him a new language. Then I started reading. "If you are reading this, then someone has mistaken your grief for weakness." Brent dropped his eyes. Kendra didn't. She sat stiff and polished like posture could survive disgust. I kept going. If Brent starts talking about the workshop, the back lot, or your future before you've even had time to bury me properly, he is not protecting you. He is protecting value. That one hit hard. Lila started crying quietly. Gavin didn't move. Brent rubbed his mouth with one hand, and for the first time since all of this started, I saw shame. Real shame. Not embarrassment. Not frustration. Shame. I finished the letter. Then I laid the workshop restriction on the desk in front of him. No sale. No listing. No redevelopment talks. Not without me. Brent stared at the page. Then at me. Then whispered, "Dad really thought I'd do this?" I answered honestly, "Yes." Enough to write it down. That was the moment something broke. Not in the room. In him. Because being caught by your mother hurts. But being seen clearly by your dead father? That goes deeper. Kendra tried one last time. We were only trying to be practical. I looked at her. No. You were trying to be early. Then I looked back at Brent. You put my bags on the porch before you even had the right to profit from it. That's the part you need to live with. He swallowed hard. What do you want me to do? I thought about that. Long enough to know I was not speaking from rage. I want the master bedroom left exactly as it is. I want no more locks changed. No more calls made. No more staging. And I want both of you out of the parts of this house you started claiming before I was even done grieving. Kendra went pale. Brent didn't argue. That surprised me. Maybe because some battles end the second the lie dies. At the door he stopped. Didn't turn around. Just asked, "Will you ever forgive me?" I looked at Eddie's letter. Then at Lila. Then at Gavin. Then at the version of myself standing on that porch with suitcases at her feet. And I said, maybe. But forgiveness is not the same thing as trust. After that, the house got quieter. Cleaner. Truer. I moved fully back into my room. Lila started coming by every week. Gavin helped me turn part of Eddie's workshop into a place where local teenagers could learn tools, engines, and honest work. We called it Eddie's Bay. That felt right. Brent wrote more than once. I answered once. Short. Clear. No anger. No softness wasted. Because here is the lesson in all this. Grief shows you who loves you. But inheritance shows you who is only waiting. And sometimes the people who protect you best are not the ones who share your blood, but the ones who still ask the right question when your life is falling apart. Who did this? So tell me in the comments. If your own child treated your grief like an inconvenience, would you ever let them all the way back in? Or would forgiveness still come with a locked door? Thank you for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any new stories.